This meeting of the Senate Judiciary Committee will come to order. At the outset, I'd like to offer my condolences to the families of Nashville, Tennessee, and to our colleague Senator Blackburn for yesterday's horrific shooting at the Covenant School. We're 93 days into this calendar year. So far, we have had 131 mass shootings in the United States. Congress and the Supreme Court have allowed this tragic situation to become the new norm in America. Are we going to do something about it? I certainly hope we do. Today, Secretary Mayorkas is making his second appearance before this committee in just over 2 years on the job. Notably, during the previous administration, the Homeland Security Secretary appeared before the committee one time in 4 years. This regular annual oversight hearing is very important as a major function of the Senate Judiciary Committee and an important part of our role in government. Secretary Mayorkas, thanks for being here. As I told you yesterday, I think you have one of the most difficult jobs in the administration. After reading your 26-page opening statement, I want to amend those remarks. With the possible exception of the Secretary of Defense, I think you have the most challenging job in this administration. The Department of Homeland Security is responsible for safeguarding our nation, facing a broad range of challenges. It bears noting what they include: responding to horrible and uniquely American phenomena like mass shootings and the tragedy in Nashville, responding to natural disasters like the tornadoes that devastated Rolling Fork, Mississippi, combating terrorism and the rising tide of domestic violent extremism, addressing the surge in cyber attacks against our schools, businesses, and critical infrastructure, overseeing our nation's borders, immigration system, and transportation security, and that's just the beginning. While the Biden administration has taken important steps to confront these challenges, we have a job to do in Congress. We must remain vigilant and do our part to provide the tools and resources to address these challenges. You're going to get a lot of questions about the southern border. I'm sure you know that. But here's the real question. What is it that Congress needs to do when it comes to immigration in this country? We can certainly find fault with what you have done. We've done it before with previous administrations as well. But what are we willing to do? It's easy to be critical, but every member of Congress needs to look in the mirror. Only Congress can actually fix our broken immigration system. I've tried for many years to work on a bipartisan immigration bill, but many have stood in the way and said nothing. They don't want any part of a solution. I want to commend my ranking member, Lindsey Graham. Lindsey, it's been 10 years since the Gang of Eight got together and produced a bill which passed with a strong bipartisan vote on the floor for comprehensive immigration reform. Unfortunately, it didn't become an item of business on the Republican-led House in 2013 and died as a result. That's why your testimony before this committee, it basically tells us we still have a job to complete. Sadly, Republicans in the House seem to approach the same thing today as they did 10 years ago, to do nothing, to block attempted reform and criticize anyone who suggests a solution to the problem. One leading House Republican has called for defunding the Department of Homeland Security. Unimaginable. Mr. Secretary, you're going to receive a lot of questions today, and some from me, about fentanyl. This is a serious, deadly problem, with fentanyl flowing in the United States from two major Mexican cartels. It requires quick, thoughtful, urgent action, but we have to be clear-eyed about what we're doing. Some are pushing the narrative that asylum seekers are smuggling fentanyl across the border, but the facts tell a different story. It is predominantly U.S. citizens entering legally at ports of entry who are bringing these dangerous drugs into the United States. So it's hard to understand why some have opposed funding for technology, like non-intrusive inspection systems to help Customs and Border Protection officers to detect fentanyl in vehicles coming through these ports of entry. The reality is DHS is working aggressively. The department just started a new coordinated surge campaign, Operation Blue Lotus, which stopped more than 900 pounds of fentanyl in its first week. We'll have to ask you some questions about that and explore where you're headed with that program. I hope we can work together. I also want to note the obvious. Our legal immigration system needs to be changed, especially at a time when our country has a desperate need for workers. We have 11 million unfilled jobs in this country. I constantly hear from employers across the board in my home state of Illinois about the need for more workers, agricultural workers, healthcare workers, and more. Some governors are so desperate to avoid increasing any immigration that they are now turning to relaxing child labor laws as a solution to their shortages. This is mindless. Turning back the clock to the times of Upton Sinclair's jungle is wrong, and it's unnecessary when there are skilled immigrants ready and willing to fill these jobs. I'm heartened. I want to make special note that Republican governors in Indiana and Utah, recognizing this dire need, have written publicly in support of more immigrant workers. I hope their voices are listened to. Whether we're discussing our southern border or the need for workers, the conclusion is the same. Congress needs to hold you accountable, yes, but we've also got to stop pointing fingers and act ourselves. We should start working together on a bipartisan basis to fix our immigration system today. And finally, you won't be surprised that I want to say a word about the Dreamers. The Dreamers, after legislation that has been pending for more than 20 years, are still looking for their legal path to citizenship. Our communities are desperate for these new immigrant workers, and DHS needs the resources to secure our border. All of us on this committee have a choice. We can blame the Secretary for a broken system that we share the responsibility to fix, or we can come together on a bipartisan basis to do our job. With that, I'll turn to Ranking Member Graham for his opening statement.